A-League Access brought to you by Barry Plant.
Hello and welcome to A-League Access, the show that talks about all things A-League and everything to do with the world game in Australia. My name is Gabriel D'Angelo. Thank you for joining us, and with me to talk about all things A-League is George Grossios. Good evening, George.
Hi, Gabriel.
To start with, congratulations to Central Coast youngster Alu Kuol, who will be joining Bundesliga side VfB Stuttgart. From playing in the NPL2 in Victoria to one of the biggest leagues in Europe in the space of 2 years, it's an amazing achievement and proves that hard work and dedication does pay off. We wish the youngster from Shepparton all the very best in his journey in Europe. On another note, the first coaching casualty of the A-League season was announced last Saturday with Melbourne Victory parting ways with Grant Brebner following their loss to Melbourne City. George, what are your thoughts?
I'm not surprised, Gabriel. It's terribly disappointing for Melbourne Victory supporters. We dissected the issues with the club in detail last week, and the inadequacies that we identified were cruelly and brutally exposed by a rampant Melbourne City, inflicting another massive loss. They beat Melbourne Victory 6-0 early in March. They've repeated the dose, but for good measure, with an extra goal, 7-0. McLaren scoring 5 goals, absolute humiliation for Melbourne Victory.
It could have been worse if it wasn't for Acton.
Yes, so they've reached a low ebb. The club, you could say, finally acted decisively, removing Grant Brebner. I'm not a fan of coach axings. It's really brutal, it's unfortunate, it's unfair on the coach and their family, of course. It demoralises the players, particularly if the coach has been a popular figure. Now, the word out of Melbourne Victory is he didn't lose the support of the players, but we know that he just had a massive task to put his program into place, to put his tactics into place, not aided by recruitment, not aided by development. And an issue that Melbourne Victory has that last weekend, for me, cruelly exposed was they struggled with player retention. That rampant Melbourne City side had Andrew Naboo and Scott Galloway. Those two boys should be the backbone of this Melbourne Victory team. Earlier during the day, Western United took on Central Coast Mariners in Tasmania, and in the 4th minute, Conor Payne scores. So those 3 players had great games, and shows that these are the sort of players that still should be at the club, in my view. So there's an issue with player retention as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't want us to continually bag or criticise Melbourne Victory. We talked about it in depth last week, but what you said is 100% correct. But also at the same time, as I just mentioned, Alu Kuol, who's having an amazing season at Central Coast and is now going to Stuttgart in the Bundesliga. He's a young Shepparton boy. He trialled at Melbourne Victory. Melbourne Victory said he wasn't good enough, and now look at him. So there are a lot of problems, not necessarily just the coach, but just across the board, really. I mean, I don't understand how they could consider someone of the quality of Alu Kuol as not good enough for Melbourne Victory. They needed someone like him desperately right now. But Melbourne Victory, I mean, I do feel sorry for Grant Brebner in the sense that he did not want the coaching job. He refused to coach twice. He inherited a squad. He didn't go out and say to the board, can you please pick this person and that person? I want him, I want him. He didn't do that. So he inherited a team that he essentially didn't even really want to begin with. He did what he possibly could with the tools that he had at his disposal. But who knows what could happen with Melbourne Victory, but there are some major changes needed, not just from the coaching point, but pretty much across the whole board.
It makes me wonder what the talent scouts were thinking when they knocked back a player of that calibre.
Exactly, and as you mentioned earlier with Naboot, have a look, compare how he was at Melbourne Victory to what he is now. At Melbourne City, he's a completely different player.
Is it the environment, Gabriel? Is
well,
it the communication from the coach? Is it the rapport with teammates? They're things that perhaps are lacking at the club, which is why players like Andrew Naboo leave. They seek greener pastures and thrive at the next club they go to.
Exactly right. And you did also mention Conor Payne. I'm not really a big fan of his, to be quite honest, but Conor Payne has just been rejuvenated at Western United under Mark Rudan. So, as you were saying, is it the environment? Is it the coaching? Is it the teammates? For someone to just change so drastically, not just Naboo, but Payne and Galloway, how they can just transform from one type of player to another really is amazing. But well, look, Melbourne Victory have a lot of problems, have a lot of challenges ahead of them, but they're a big club, and I'm sure they'll bounce back eventually. But
will they?
Well, I'm sure they will, but we'll see. Time will tell, I guess. Thank you, George. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Melbourne Victory's winning goalkeeper, Gabby Garton. You're watching A-League Access. Tonight on A-League Access, we have a very special guest on the program. We're joined by W-League champion Gabby Garton. She is the goalkeeper for Melbourne Victory's W-League side and is an Argentine international who was part of Argentina's squad at the 2019 FIFA Women's World Cup. Gabriela, thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, firstly, congratulations on winning the W-League title. Have you still recovered physically and mentally after such an intense final?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's so much recovering from the final or the celebrations, but yeah, it's been good. It was definitely a memorable match. I think going into it, quite a few of us were aware that it would be one that we'd remember for a while. I just don't think we expected to win in the 120th minute, but I don't know. We were all happy to leave with our medals and the trophy. So,
how have you seen the season? What's the standard of the competition like compared to other competitions you've participated in?
I would say it's probably, it's definitely higher than the league in Argentina. Probably also a step above what you would see in college football or university football in the US, which is where I also played. I think this year was interesting because I think before the season, people were a bit uncertain in terms of how the W-League was going to look with the kind of the exodus of Matildas and some other players. But honestly, it was great to see some of the younger talent step up, and it was entertaining. I think it was kind of one of the most even seasons as well. It's great because you go into every match and any team can win, so that makes it for some entertaining football, and also it's a good challenge as a player when you're trying to grow and develop. If every game is even like that, it's good, especially as a goalkeeper. You get tested frequently, which is when you grow. So
were you preparing for a penalty shootout?
Mentally, I think I kind of was. I somehow believed that we were going to be able to get that last goal, but obviously as the minutes were ticking down, the seconds were ticking down, it was just kind of, in your head you're kind of thinking, all right, maybe this player, where is she likely to strike it, and who's going to be their likely shooters. But yeah, I think most of us were grateful that we were able to have it decided during the match. I think in terms of how the game went, I think we definitely deserved it. We were definitely pushing a lot more, created a lot more chances than Sydney did. Their goalkeeper stepped up big time, but I think, looking at that game, I think we definitely deserved to come away with a win. On
a personal note, you have had a very good season. I mean, you were named in goals in the PFA Women's Team of the Year. How did you feel when you were awarded that honour? Oh,
it was, I don't know if overwhelming is the word, but it was a bit, I was just really grateful. I think getting that kind of recognition, and above all from your peers, I think that's one of the best things that you can receive, and it kind of gives me something to hopefully build on towards next year as well. Coming into the league as a new player, kind of pretty much as an unknown, I think I felt like I had to kind of prove myself, and especially with a team where we were able to, I think, be one of the best defensive units in the league. But coming into the year, we only had one player who had played at Victory in the past, and the back line, Angie Beard, on the left. So for us, it was kind of a challenge to get to know each other and kind of become more established and more stable in the back. So I think it's also a credit to my defensive line that happened. I think it was no accident that I think both Angie Beard and Kayla Morrison made it into that team as well. So it was a great season, I think, for the entire squad. But defensively, we were happy to come out of it. I think 8 clean sheets in 14 games. So as a goalkeeper, it's like the best when you don't have to worry about picking the ball out of the back of the net.
Sure.
You've had a remarkable journey, Gabby. Born and raised in the United States, but you've ended up playing in Argentina and representing the national team. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so my mother is from Argentina, so it wasn't exactly random that I chose to move there. But it was kind of came about after finishing at university. I went to Rice University and finished playing. Wasn't exactly sure that I was going to continue to play, but when the chance came about to move and play for River Plate, I was really interested to see what it would be like to play in a different country and also see kind of what my mom grew up experiencing in Argentina, and also getting the chance to be with my family who was still there. But it was definitely a big shift and a big difference in terms of not so much the level, I would say, but definitely the level of support that we received at clubs in Argentina. There's a big gap. And at that time, when I moved in 2013, an even bigger gap between the men's game and the women's game in terms of the support that you receive. And there still was a lot of stigmas around women playing football, which is still very much seen as a men's sport there. But yeah, it's great to see the amount of passion, or the level of passion, that most of my teammates had. And I kind of fell back in love with the game, you could say, when I moved to Argentina. University, it becomes sort of almost a job, but when you go to a country where you have girls that would travel 2 hours by public transport to get to training every day and not being paid to do it, that passion is sort of contagious. So I think I definitely caught the bug.
Yeah. Well, River Plate is one of the biggest clubs in world football, really. So what was it like, not only just playing there, but also feeding off the supporters and their intensity and their passion? Did you also feel a bit like a pioneer because, as you mentioned, women's football is still at that sort of infancy stage yet?
I would say I felt more of that sort of pioneer feeling with the national team. I think at River, when I was there, we were still very much on the back burner, and I'm a River Plate fan, but at that time I kind of was a bit disappointed, I guess, in the club in terms of the lack of support that we received from them. There were times where we would get kind of kicked off the pitch because the youth boys would need it. Like I'm talking U10 or younger. So sometimes it's hard to support a club in that way, but then you understand too, it was more of a cultural issue. I think there were definitely pioneers that had it much worse, or was much more difficult for them to play than when I was there. But I think just the fact that we were there and continuing to occupy that space was a big step. But with the national team, it was kind of following our journey to World Cup qualification was kind of the first time that women's football in Argentina really got put onto the big stage. And during the World Cup, I remember there being images of people walking along some of the biggest streets in like in CBD and what we CBD in Buenos Aires, and you would see people that would be like 8 or 9 in the morning, I think, for them. People stopped outside of, I guess it would be sort of like JB Hi-Fi in Buenos Aires, just like peeking in through the window and watching our games, and it was really amazing to see that. Like I don't think there were a lot of people that had never seen women's football before that World Cup. So it's kind of a major thing and a major shift in terms of people starting to see that football is a game for everybody.
Yeah.
Gabby, tell us about life as an international player for the Argentine national side.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing experience when you get to put on that jersey. I don't get to wear the blue and white stripes, but because I'm a goalkeeper. But it's pretty amazing when you go and you hear the national anthem, and it's hard not to tear up, I guess, when you're standing next to your teammates and sometimes facing some of the best teams in the world. When we got to come here in 2019 for the Cup of Nations, it was a really cool experience coming face to face with some of the best players in Australia, and I would say they're amongst the top in the world. So it's something that I've wanted since I was very young. I remember watching the U.S. women's national team in 1999 as a 9-year-old, just like glued to the television as the U.S. won, and watching them in front of 90,000 fans at the Rose Bowl, I was like, I want to be there someday. So it's kind of coming full circle. It's like accomplishing a dream, but it's weird. It kind of, every time you feel like you've accomplished something, it kind of leaves that taste in your mouth that you want more. So I think it's something that I'm enjoying, but there's also, you know, every time you finish something, there's a new goal that comes about.
Yeah, well, you've played in the United States, you've played in Argentina, you're playing here for Melbourne Victory now. Where do you see the level of women's football in Australia compared to others?
I would say Australia is amongst some of the better leagues in the world. I think, I'm not sure if it's on par with England or the NWSL maybe in the US, but those are leagues that they're kind of destination leagues. But I think that definitely W-League, and even at the youth level, there's a lot of talent here, and it's a good place to grow and a good place to be, really. I think the quality that you get in terms of the conditions at clubs and kind of the treatment you receive, I think it's on par with some of the best leagues in the world. Like, I think the only thing that would really draw me away from Australia would be an offer from a massive club and some of maybe the bigger leagues in Europe, but I don't know, I think that this is a good place to be and a good place to grow for sure.
Gabby, thank you very much for your time. Once again, congratulations and all the very best in the future to you.
Thanks very much, Gabrielle, and George, it was really a pleasure to be here with you
Thanks,
guys.
Gabby. Great to have you on.
Yeah, thank you so much. We'll be back with more A-League access after the break. Welcome back to A-League Access. Staying with women's football, the Matildas had a rather bad week in their preparations for the Tokyo Olympics, where they lost 5-2 to Germany and then 5-0 to the Netherlands. It was the first time in 26 years that the Matildas conceded 5 or more in consecutive games. George, is the sky falling on the Matildas, or is it still early days yet?
Very much early days, Gabrielle. I know it's easy to predict doom and gloom, but let's put things into perspective. The Matildas played against Germany, who are the reigning Olympic champion. Sure, they lost 5-2. The Germans are just a fantastic side. They're one of the best nations in world football at the moment, men's and women's, but the women's program has just grown so much that it's now exposed the levels that Australia need to reach. But in saying that, they can take heart from the fact that they can choose some players that weren't able to be part of the squad because of COVID, as well as local W-League commitments.
Yeah.
So not all doom and gloom. They can still call on players such as Ellie Carpenter and Amy Harrison, for example.
Kaya Simon,
Yes,
Steph
indeed.
Catley,
So
Ellie Carpenter, one of my favourites.
Yep. So there's still some positives the team can take from that performance. Of course, Gustafsson is very much experimenting. He's getting to know the squad that he has. He's getting to know players' best positions. So he will be tinkering with formations, tactics and squad. So he has that reassurance that he can draw on players from the W-League. We followed that up with I must admit, the follow-up performance to the Netherlands does worry me. The Netherlands, of course, are a powerhouse in their own right. They're the reigning European champions, runners-up in the previous World Cup. So they're no slouch either. So that was quite a rude shock, that particular performance. You would have thought after scoring 2 goals against the Germans, we would be a lot more productive and threatening up forward. Unfortunately, we didn't show much. So it's given Gustafsson definitely something to think about, but all hope is not lost yet. We still have a couple of friendlies in June, and of course when we have those W-League players return to the squad, they'll be better for it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you mentioned those players that are missing. I mean, that is the core group of the Matildas team. They are the cogs, they're the engines that really get things going. And I do sort of see the criticism in the way that they played and the goals in which they had received, that they were defensive errors rather than some amazing pieces of play from either Germany or the Netherlands. I understand that, and I also get that there is that frustration that Sam Kerr is no longer an unknown quantity. Like, the other teams know her and know her very, very well, especially seeing as now she's playing at Chelsea. So she's always got not just one, but 2 other players marking her, watching her every move. So there's that as well. But I think that one of those major issues is the fact that who is going to come into the side coming up for the Olympics. I think they desperately need someone of not just those players that we mentioned earlier, but also someone like Lisa Divana, who I think is, she's someone that has that pathological hatred of losing. She's that player that you would just love to have on your side. She comes on and she will give you 120% regardless of what shirt she's wearing, whether it be Melbourne Victory, whether it be the Matildas. She will do everything possible to win that game. So she's another really key piece of the puzzle that the Matildas need.
Well, I'll get Steph Catley back, but on that point about Lisa Divana, I can't understand why she fell out of favour with Milicic and Stajic.
Could be personality clashes. Lisa Divana does have some of those issues, but I think that putting that aside, I mean, if you were a coach and you needed someone to come on and to really show some leadership and strength and really take and drag her teammates with her to the finish line and win the game, you have to have her there.
Well, as Gustafsson said, he deliberately chose two champion teams, two really difficult sides to match up against, to expose our Matildas team. And to his credit, he's achieved that aim. Now he has to start thinking about how do I rebuild their confidence, because he will come across other fantastic sides in the Tokyo Olympics.
Yes.
Germany and Netherlands are two of the better sides going around, of course, but there'll also be Gabby Garton's Argentinians that we have to contend against. The Brazilian team, the United States,
China, Japan. You know, there's some very strong teams out there. The United Kingdom or Great Britain as well, because they're not as England in the Olympics, but France are Italy. There's some very, very good teams. But also, what's slightly concerning is the depth that the Matildas have, because, like we said, yes, they're missing a bunch of players, and I'm pretty sure that the team that Gustafsson had wasn't his best team. I'm certain that he's got in his mind a core squad of players that he will take with him to Tokyo, and that some of those players that played weren't on his mind and are not going to be on that list. Well, they had the opportunity, they got a cap or two or whatever, that's fine. But I think that the depth of the squad, that sort of, well, if you're injured, we've got someone who can come in and replace you, and it's almost like clockwork. I don't think we've got that with the Matildas yet. The lack of not having Steph Catley and Kaya Simon and a few of these other really
Amy Harrison, Ellie Carpenter, as we said before,
having these players not there, it was really evident. It really, really showed. And that's more of a concern to me anyway, because I really do think it's early days yet.
Yeah, look, and I like the fact that they're prepared to give W-League players an opportunity. That's a great advertisement for our national competition.
Yeah, but with the Matildas in particular, because the good thing, I can understand how some people are concerned about how the Matildas are going, the direction that they're taking. It wasn't that long ago that the Matildas were actually one of the candidates, one of the favourites to actually lift the FIFA Women's World Cup in 2019. And that the Matildas were just going on this run of amazing performances where they won a contest in the United States. They did very, very well in the Algarve Cup, which is a huge tournament for women's football in Portugal. I mean, the women's football scene, when it came to the Matildas, was just thriving. And then after all the unpleasantness with their ex-coach and also the fact that it was sort of like the World Cup was over and it's like then COVID hit and it just went down. It was a bit of a struggle, but hopefully the Matildas can bounce back.
Look, we need them to have a strong performance as impetus for the World Cup because, of course, we are one of the host nations along with New Zealand.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, good luck to the Matildas. Hopefully they'll go well. Thank you very much for that, George. That's all for this week's edition of A-League Access. Thank you very much to our special guest, Gabby Garton from Melbourne Victory. Thank you very much, George.
Thanks, Gabriel. I'm
Gabriel D'Angelo. Thank you for watching. See you again next week. Bye for now.
A League Access brought to you by Barry Plant.